I'm ultimately a voice. I'm giving voice to how we go from burnout to resilience, what a healthy high-performance culture looks like. And in a very practical sense, I consult some of the world's leading organizations on how to create that. I guest teach on the KPMG Executive Leadership Program and give keynotes to the likes of Deloitte and L'Oreal and the UK government and Oxford University. It's a great question. Most people discover that they have burnout when they've crossed their own boundaries and they're really experiencing the negative feedback of that. But before they get there, they're often in some type of pain, tiredness, exhaustion. And I think a lot of the work is raising awareness that even though everyone around you is also feeling that, that's not good, nor should it be normal. And so there's a kind of an awareness raising that needs to happen. And I found that when I come in and speak to organizations, really I'm showing them all the hidden drivers of burnout and the ways in which even in the best of organizations we put ourselves in a burnout trajectory. But I think the way to get people to change before they're even aware of burnout is often it's through the cautionary tales of others. It's actually through a colleague that's had to take sick leave or has potentially had a real health scare. And my own story is about the really lasting negative consequences of burnout, and somehow coming in and revealing myself and really sharing that, it wakes people up and it's like, wow, I really need to look after myself. One of the phrases that I shared in my keynote today is, if you don't look after your wellness, you'll be forced to tend to your illness. That's a reframe for people. It's not waiting until you're sick to go to the doctor. It's about taking care and stewardship over your health now. There's so many trends happening in the field of burnout and resilience and well-being. I think the first is a realization that so much of the wellness initiatives that have kind of taken roots since the pandemic have been a sticking plaster. There's been, a general initiative of let's have a calendar of well-being events, let's have webinars on, how to be resilient, how to manage stress, how to breathe well. There's yoga, there's fruit bowls and reception, and actually, all of that, if you look at the data, hasn't shown to work. People are still burning out, mental health levels are really high. And so the major trend is that we're now shifting to looking at the organizational stressors. What are the organizational factors that shape a person's work life that contribute to burnout? 73% of HR directors say that excessive workload is the leading cause of burnout. Obviously, of course, an avalanche of requests and tasks coming at you every day, pressure every day is going to put you on a burnout trajectory. And so I think organizations are looking at how do we get way more intelligent about workload, about giving people managers the right training so they can create really healthy environments for people to work in, so that it's not just putting the onus on the individual to be resilient, it's about looking at the environment and the external context. I'm learning to understand, identify, and talk about myself as a trauma survivor, which is really difficult. It's a really difficult thing to actually own and acknowledge. But my most significant life experience was losing my brother in a car accident when I was 4 and being there when he died. And I share that because that gave rise to a false resilience in myself. They often talk about people who experience early childhood trauma having coping strategies that lead them to go on to do amazing things. In the literature, it's known as identity revitalization. So, for example, Olympians who win gold versus bronze are 3 times more likely to have experienced early childhood trauma. It does kind of create this incredible drive, and it definitely created an incredible drive within me. But that drive within me was one where I didn't know how to stop. I only knew how to push through and plow on and white knuckle it. And that actually sowed the seeds of my own burnout and and that burnout led to a health crisis. And actually it was in the health crisis where I discovered what resilience truly is. You know, I've been suffering with chronic pain for about 5 years, and so to carry that burden every single day requires you to really learn the art of resilience. And actually it's a shift from a kind of a hard, tough exterior to actually really allowing and being able to be with what's going on for you in your mind, emotionally, in your body, and to be able to process that and release that and allow that to move through you. And in the process of that, basically allowing yourself to be transformed by adversity. This is the big thing I talk about, is that these defining moments of tragedy, which can be anything from losing someone very close to you to a terrible accident and everything in between, these moments absolutely floor us. And for many people, it can kind of cold and calcify them. They can close themselves off to life. They can become very bitter and angry. And for others, there is this process in which it cracks them open and it transforms them, and they become more beautiful versions of themselves. They often discover their deepest service. Like the reason that I speak is because I've discovered for myself what resilience truly means, because I'm living and breathing it every day. And to be able to actually discover that for myself and share that with other people is ultimately the gift of adversity. And so these moments, which on one level have taken so much from me, have also given me and other people so much. So the key is to align productivity and rest and renewal, and for one to serve the other. So organizations need to get way clearer on priorities, what their objectives are, what their key results are. Anyone in the organization at any moment, if they're asked, what is my priority? They should be able to say it, and they should be able to say how it connects with the organization's priority. There should be a culture of resisting digital distraction, a culture of deep focus, so people can really advance their work agendas. And then rather than being in this kind of gray zone of work where they're kind of working, they're not really working on priority stuff, but it's tiring them out, but instead it's like, I'm focused on this key thing that advances the business or advances my team. And then when I'm finished, I'm finished. I walk away from the work. I do something that is my recovery protocol, whatever that could be, walking the dog, taking a breather, doing something nourishing. And that organizations need to restructure the workflow of everyone so that it's a cadence between peak exertion. We want peak performance. We want people to play out their skins, and we want a proper renewal cycle so you can go again into exertion and back into renewal. And I think it's about organizations creating the conditions for that so there's a genuine win-win. They achieve their goals, they achieve their targets, and their employees are actually able to do that for the long term. The first step to building resilience is to look at your life holistically. You don't just experience stress at work, you experience stress in your relationship, you experience stress in your home, amongst your family. You might experience physical stress, mental stress. So I always use the analogy of seeing your life as a stool with 4 legs and understanding that actually there are different pillars in my life, and those pillars can come under stress and pressure. And so when we're actually trying to preemptively anticipate when legs of our stool, whether it be work or relationship or home or our mental and physical health, are going to come under pressure, and proactively mitigate that pressure. So there's a preventative quality to resilience. Then it's about capacity building, and it's about doing the basics well. It's about sleep, it's about nutrition, it's about exercise. There's obviously advanced protocols like fasting and cold showers and all of that newfangled stuff, but it's essentially building and expanding your capacity. And then in a professional context, it's really honing in on the subtle ways in which you push yourself beyond your capacity. Like, do you have issues with boundary setting? Do you struggle to say no? How can you get a handle on that? these are the areas that if people focus on, they can build much more resilience professionally. There's lots of different diagnostic tools that can be used to measure resilience. The one that I use actually comes from the Resilience Institute, which is a company that is one of the early players in the resilience space. They were founded in 2002. So they take you through a battery of questions that help you identify both your strength factors and your risk factors for resilience. So your strength factor for resilience would be feeling intrinsically motivated at work, feeling a sense of purpose, that's because your work is then feeding you. Another example is just feeling very physically well and strong in your body and not having, health symptoms or chronic health symptoms. Whereas risk factors might be a sense of being overwhelmed by your workload, or it could be a sense of being distracted, or there could be relational tension. And so with this particular diagnostic tool, it looks at your resilience ratio. So how many strength factors you have versus risk factors. And generally, someone who's resilient is looking for 2.5 times strength factors to risk factors. We're all going to have risk factors, but the idea is that you at least have 2.5 times more strength factors. So that's just kind of giving you a little under the hood of one diagnostic tool, but generally, it's just really important for any organization to actually measure well-being. Only 1% of organizations are measuring well-being in a systematic way. And when they're doing programs, whether it be leadership programs, resilience programs, are actually measuring before and after and 6 months after and getting a handle on how resilient people are. What you ideally want is for any chief people officer to have a dashboard where they can actually see how each team in their local environment, how resilient they are. And so you're actually looking to create burnout hotspots. You're not looking to create them, but you're looking to identify where they are so you can do targeted well-being initiatives rather than offering everyone an all-hands webinar. You want to focus in and give proper care, attention, and training to the burnout hotspots, and that can be found through proper diagnostic tools. Organizations don't realize that under the hard exterior of everyone's professional identity is actually a person that's quite soft and sensitive and has emotional needs. And so they can overlook the real need for deeper levels of psychological safety, to really feel safe to be able to actually share what's going on in your life, share when you're struggling with burnout, voice when you have concerns with your team, be able to articulate to a colleague when there's an issue that you need to name. Their need to feel appreciated, to be recognized. There's these human needs that we would prioritize if they were our children, but when it comes to working in adult organizations, oh yeah, it's fine, they can just get on with it. And so actually the key to what I call a healthy high performance culture is really actually meeting people's emotional needs for safety and recognition and belonging and acceptance. And I often say that a soft belly is a sign of a high performing culture. Are you carrying around anxiety and tension about your colleagues or the targets that you need to hit? If you are, then ultimately your performance is compromised. We want people to feel focused and optimized, but also a sense of openness that allows real creative intelligence to come through. Next for me is writing my book, The A to Z of Resilience, getting it published, taking that to the world.